I put triangles and communication together in this unit simply because triangles are often formed when one member of a dyad chooses not to communicate directly with the other. I don't say one member is unable to communicate with the other for two reasons. One is that the inability to communicate is almost always a perceived inability, not actual muteness. The other reason is that a partner in a relationship may distance him or herself, cut off completely, or simply refuse to attend to the other person. Now here I'm not referring to those situations in which there is such a power imbalance that one member of the dyad is actively silenced and suppressed. I'm talking more about those things that happen naturally and regularly in human relationships. I want to focus on the much more common situation in which there is choice and a degree of intent. There may be conscious intent to spare the other the impact of what ought to be said, though that desire has more to do with the person's degree of differentiation than it does with the other's vulnerability. To tell the truth is to take responsibility for telling it, and to accept we have no control over the way that truth will be received. If the characters in soap operas functioned at anything approaching a healthy level of self-differentiation, the soap operas wouldn't be on the air anymore. There may also be a desire for power over the other, because knowledge is power and secrets are powerful weapons. And so, we choose not to communicate directly. It's not an exaggeration to say that most issues that become sources of heightened anxiety in families and congregations become so because of an absence of direct communication, an excess of indirect communication, and the reactivity of those who get caught in triangles as they act on second-hand or intentionally distorted data. Triangles are inevitable. Bowen insists on the inherent instability of dyadic relationships, like the one I have with the dog who's in the background and wants to go home. When one or both of the parties in a relationship function at a low level of self-differentiation, the force of togetherness, the inevitable anxiety that arises, becomes too much to bear. One or both in the relationship turn to a third party, a person, a group, an issue, a memory, or God. An individual struggling in or because of a relationship with an issue, a group, a memory, a belief, God, will inevitably turn to another. A pastoral leader, unhappy in her relationship with her pastoral charge, should find support and encouragement in family. If she turns to her family and demands they meet or compensate for needs she feels her work and her church should meet, she's triangulating. She's also likely to make her spouse and children anxious, to discharge some of her own anxiety about her church and her work, which is to say she avoids working through her own problems by causing problems for those closest to her. As anxiety increases in the dyadic relationship between A and B, one or both will reach out in search of a C. Ideally, someone perceived to be in a position to do something for either or both A or B. Someone perceived to be stronger than either A or B. Someone who may well function at a higher level of self-differentiation. In fact, that's very likely going to be a choice. Anxious energy in a triangle is drawn toward the strongest member, like iron filings to a magnet. And this is where the pastor often comes into the picture. So I commend to you chapter 7 in A Failure of Nerve, chapter 9 in Creating a Healthier Church, and chapter 3 in Gilbert's book. But you'll find what all say about triangles is like a thread through all they have to say about family systems. One of the most common questions students and experienced ministers too ask as they reflect on pastoral practice really amounts to, when is a triangle not a triangle? The question takes many forms and usually comes with a story attached. But behind the questions, I hear uncertainty about communication, pastoral visiting, counseling, intervention in emergencies. When is a triangle not a triangle? Now, Bowen says, in effect, all relationships are triangles. He sees in the background, sometimes dimly, people, issues, memories. In simplest terms, anytime three people come into a relationship, however briefly, there is a triangle. Anytime two people are brought into relationship around an issue, a memory, a belief, God, there is a triangle. The moment a pastoral leader walks into a hospital room, whether the patient is alone or with another, awake or asleep, there are triangles. And triangles are not always bad things. So I like to distinguish between natural triangles and active triangulation. And I see triangulation as both an intentional process and a process that occurs in situations of real or perceived anxiety, not necessarily involving anyone's conscious intent. Triangulation can be patterned behavior, which can be traced back to one's family of origin or at least to past experiences. Triangulation may even be human nature. There are triangles and there are triangles. And the examples that Richardson and Friedman offer are all triangles. So here's the scenario I'm most often asked about. A comes to pastoral leader B, obviously upset, and says C is dying in hospital, about to leave his wife, mad as a hatter about last night's board meeting. Pastor B better go see C before it's too late. And Pastor B may have his coat in one hand and the car keys in the other before A has finished the story and rush out the door in front of A. Or Pastor B may catch his breath and reflect on the present encounter and ask A some more questions, dealing first with A's presenting anxiety. There may be a deeper truth, there may be more accurate information behind that anxiety. And Pastor B may go soon to the hospital or C's house. Regardless of the reality encountered when he finally met C, or whether B went or not, B is likely to ask, did I do the right thing? Was I in a triangle? Yes. Did A consciously, intentionally, or unconsciously triangulate me? Maybe. And really, that one can only be figured out after the fact. But with triangles, the awareness is more than half the battle. If B doesn't take time to identify first A's expressed anxiety and then his own anxiety, his eventual encounter with C will serve A's anxiety and B's own anxiety and impose them on C, who may or may not really be in the situation A so anxiously related. Should B go to see C based on secondhand information? Maybe, maybe not. If B goes and says, so, A tells me you're in trouble, that's a triangle. When is a triangle not a triangle? How about pastoral counseling? A comes to see the pastor and the conversation turns to her husband C. Pastor B listens. Maybe A is attempting to triangulate her, maybe not. Or maybe B triangulates, as is often the case, by making judgments based on what A says about C, by rushing to problem solving instead of continuing to listen. If B offers to go and have a talk with C, she's triangulating. If B stays with A in the moment, attuned to her emotional energy, and doesn't volunteer to join an emotional ménage à trois, there's no triangle. Mediation and conciliation processes create triangular relationships, and you can guess I'm painfully aware of that given the situation now at AST. But just in the past couple of weeks, my daughter has just voted on a new agreement with her employer after a successful conciliation process. And I'm now consultant to a presbytery inquiry that is running in parallel to a mediation process. The distinguishing factor is the consent of the parties in the dyad to bring the third party into the relationship and the process that has created the relationship. But consent is never equally passionate. Believe me, it's not. And this is true in labor negotiations and in marriage counseling. But the triangle is created with intent for a purpose and will not continue once that purpose is fulfilled. We say that of marriage counseling or any form of relationship counseling. And in a presbyterial system like the United Church of Canada, the Pastoral Relations Committee's involvement in a JNAC or a pastoral intervention on behalf of presbytery or a judicial process normally creates a triangle. And the latter two may involve in the triangle congregation, minister, and presbytery represented by a committee. It may involve two factions within a congregation and presbytery represented by a committee. Or it may be congregation and minister together as one party, presbytery or the church as another, and a committee. But it's a triangular relationship with a purpose for a time, and if there isn't full consent to the process, there should be at least, however grudging, recognition of the special role of the third party and its authority to act as it's acting. And the last example I would suggest of when a triangle is not a triangle is advocacy. There are times when a pastoral leader enters a relationship in which there is a distinct disparity in power. The pastoral leader legitimately acts in this way, motivated by principle and within the office of pastoral leadership, with intent for a purpose. But regardless of the pastor's own anxiety in the situation, the focus is on meeting the real need of the one who needs an advocate, not improving the pastoral leader's effectiveness or advancing the pastoral leader's career in the church. The interest is in empowerment, not in exercising power.